With our signatures today, we will formally declare the intention of our three countries to replace NAFTA with the USMCA, a truly groundbreaking achievement, modern-day agreement.
The new agreement lifts the risk of serious economic uncertainty that lingers throughout a trade renegotiation process, uncertainty that would have only gotten worse and more damaging had we not reached a new NAFTA.
This day is the culmination of a long process based on dialogue and negotiations that allow us to overcome differences and to conciliate our visions.
Mexican President Trump, and the Prime Minister of Canada there signing this trade agreement, the president calling it the biggest, most important, largest trade deal in U.S. and world history. We're here at the Reagan Library. When Reagan traveled around the world, it was the G8. Now it's the G20 and the president there. Not everyone back in Washington, though, is fully behind this new trade deal.
What isn't in it yet is enough enforcement reassurances regarding workers, provisions that relate to workers and to the environment. There also has not been a law passed in Mexico in terms of wages and working conditions in Mexico. So when all of that happens, people will make a judgment about whether they will be supporting it.
We'll start there about the president's trip to the G20. Let's bring in our panel from Washington, national security analyst Morgan Ortagus, Leslie Marshall, Democratic strategist, and David Brody, chief political analyst for the Christian Broadcasting Network. Morgan, your thoughts on this trade deal and the G20 overall?
Well, I think the president is right that it is a historic trade agreement. Trade is one of the most arcane things that any administration has to deal with, and getting this through, especially through the Mexicans and the Canadians who, held out to the very end on a few sticking points related to dairy, is an accomplishment. However, saying that, it's a little too early to measure the drapes, because now you'll have probably even tougher negotiators than the Canadians and the Mexicans, and that's the Democrats in Congress, as we just saw. I'm really looking, Brett, towards Sherrod Brown. He's a Democrat who may very well likely run for president. He has the most integrity and reputation as it relates to workers' rights and to trade. And I think he's sort of my bellwether on whether we're going to get true Democrat support to pass this in the House and the Senate.
Yeah, it's not just Democrats. A few Republicans have piped up already. Marco Rubio, senator from Florida, tweeted, as currently drafted, this deal will put Florida's seasonal vegetable growers out of business. It allows Mexico to dump government-subsidized produce on the U.S. market. Going forward, America will depend on Mexico for our winter vegetables. Unacceptable. There are a few others who have weighed in as well, Leslie.
Yeah, Senator Toomey is another. Everybody wants protections. I mean, the unions want protections for workers, specifically if more jobs go to Mexico, which is a big concern, not just by Democrats and the unions, but over on the right as well. Will there be more outsourcing? Will there be protection for investors? Will there be protection if jobs go to Mexico or other places overseas, to Nancy Pelosi's point regarding the environment and protection for workers? The president has a political win here, Brett, but are we going to see a win in Congress? I'm really not sure, because there is a lot of pushback on both sides. To Marco Rubio's point, agriculture is being affected by this. So a political win for the president, but I'm not sure what's going to happen, especially when you have Democrats taking over the House coming up in January.
Yeah, a different environment come January. Meantime, David, big issues, obviously, at the G20. The president canceling the meeting with Vladimir Putin, but the biggest meeting yet to come tomorrow night with the Chinese President Xi.
Well, that's right. And of course, all eyes will be on that meeting for sure. Brett, I got to tell you, there's a lot, obviously, not just at stake, but here's what's going on. President Trump is not at a point now where he can bluff. I mean, in other words, it's time to pony up. And what I mean by that is he can't back away at this point. There's just no way. And so what does that mean? Well, economically, America, we know, is doing pretty well. That's a good, strong hand to go into all of this with. Bottom line is, if he can come away with obviously something on intellectual property theft and also all of this forced technology transfer in terms of what the Chinese are doing, I think that's obviously going to be a big victory for this administration. Having said that, I think we've got a long road ahead of us. The one I will point out is that over 250 billion more in tariffs come January, and that's another issue that Donald Trump can raise.
I plan to ask Defense Secretary Mattis about a number of hotspots around the world, including China. Morgan, here is the president talking about this meeting yet to come with President Xi.
If we could make a deal, that'd be good. I think they want to, and I think we'd like to, and we'll see. But we'll be meeting with President Xi in a little while. But for the most part, tomorrow, I would say, would be our big meeting. But in the meantime, people are working. Our staff is working, and we have a lot of very talented people working. Larry Kudlow's representatives are dealing with them on a constant basis.
Yeah.
Kind of laying the groundwork, the art of the deal here.
That's true. I don't expect a full-fledged deal tomorrow. I think that the problem and the challenge here, which is different for the president than, say, what he faced in North Korea, is we really have two competing factions here. Clearly, the economic and business interests, that side of his administration, would like to get to a deal sooner rather than later because they're worried about the effects of the tariffs on the economy. But if you look at it from a national security perspective, Brett, the Chinese are not going to come out and admit tomorrow what they've done on IP, the theft. They're not going to reverse, 3 decades of how they've operated in society, nor Xi's plan for the future, his vision for how China is going to lead the world. So I really think, and I can't wait to hear your interview with Mattis, I think we're, not to be hyperbolic, but we're at a moment when we really are in a generational struggle with China. And I think that the president, one of the most brilliant things that he's done in this administration is for he and his team to keep the heat on the Chinese. And I hope that they continue to do it. Work towards a deal, but there's no need to come out of this weekend with some sort of magic deal and summing it all up.
Yeah. Leslie, quickly, a lot of these world leaders know now how President Trump operates. The Japanese prime minister came with news of potentially 2 new factories, Japanese automakers, to the U.S. It seems perhaps that the Chinese president will come with some deliverables if it's not even a big deal.
Well, Brett, one of the things that I think both China and the United States are seeing are that these tariffs haven't had the impact that they want. From our perspective, and I agree, and many Democrats agree with the president on unfair trade practices by China, but our trade deficit continues to grow. And in addition, we're not seeing factories pick up and move out of China to Vietnam and to other locations in Asia. And in addition to that, what do we want long term? One of the things the president said in the 2016 campaign, a promise that he hasn't kept, was that he was going to come after China for their currency manipulation. And I don't think that's going to come up tomorrow. I think what's going to happen is both parties are going to agree, hey, this tariff on both sides isn't working out the way we wanted. We can come to some type of a deal, but I think they're going to stop going forward with more tariffs because it's not working out for either side the way they thought it would.
All right, panel, stand by. Next up. Looking live at Capitol Hill, the possibility of a partial government shutdown December 7th, next week. We're back with the panel. Start there in the lightning round. David, what about this? 7 spending bills left, but the border wall is still the big sticking point.
Brett, I really think it could happen. If it's going to happen, this would be the time. It's not a presidential election year. And look, Democrats are coming in January. So if you're going to do it now, you might as well do it. If you're Trump, I think there's a real possibility.
All right, Leslie?
No. Sorry, disagree. Wrong. You need the Democrats. Democrats aren't going to do it for 3 reasons. 1, they don't want the wall. 2, they don't agree with the president on this and many other things, if anything. And 3rd, what's in it for the Democrats? They need the Democrats for this. They're not going to get it. Republicans should just go halfway and agree to $1.6 billion instead of 5. So at least they get what was in the original deal on a bipartisan level that agreed.
And there's other questions as well, whether the protection of Mueller, all that stuff factors in. We'll follow it next week. Morgan, I want to turn to one of the biggest data breaches we've seen in a long time, and that is of the Starwood brand of hotels. This includes Marriott. Marriott releasing a statement saying, we deeply regret this incident happened, fell short of what our guests deserve. We expect of ourselves. We are doing everything we can to support our guests and using lessons learned to be better moving forward. But if you look at this is one of the worst cyber attacks we've seen.
It's a disaster for Marriott, Brett. You're looking at 500 million customers whose information and privacy has been put at risk here. You're also looking at what was astounding to me is that these illicit actors had been inside Marriott for 4 years before Marriott discovered it. So what you're saying is if you're a corporation in America today, you have about a 30% chance of getting hacked. And 90% of the time that's due to human error. So clearly there's a lot of education that corporations need to do with their workers. We also need to know were there Russian or Chinese or North Korean sponsors behind this. That's what I want to know.
I have 10 seconds each. 10, that's it. Winner and loser. Morgan.
Winner, Elizabeth Dole. She had a huge foundation gala last night for Hidden Heroes. Thank you, Elizabeth Dole. Loser of the week, GM layoff. I'm very sorry for those workers. Terrible way to go into Christmas.
Okay, Leslie.
Winners, all the people that have adopted children, like myself, to give those kids a forever family. It's National Adoption Month in November, on this last day in November. And losers, Southwest Airlines for not firing the employee who laughed at a 5-year-old child and because of their name and took a picture of their boarding pass and posted it online.
That was 12, David.
I better go 8. Steph Curry for responding to that 9-year-old girl who wanted basketball shoes of his and Under Armour. Steph Curry is able to change Under Armour's policy basically about making sure girls had those shoes. And loser, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, comparing obviously those migrants coming over across the border to Jews fleeing Nazi Germany. Politics 101. Don't go there. Just don't.
Pretty close, panel. Thank you very much. Have a good weekend.